Shalakaya. Chakshun Militang Yena. Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya. Prabhu Nityananda. Sri Advaita Gadadhar. Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The last day of Kartik is good for our meditation on the last prayer in Damodarastak. Namo Radhikaya Tadiya Piyaya. Namo Nanta Lilaya Devaya Tubhyam. Sanatana Goswami, in his commentary, explains that this prayer reserves the sweetest for the very end, because in high quality literature, in the Vedic tradition, the composers seek to end everything on the sweetest possible note. So what could be sweeter than how Sri Damodarastak ends? Offering obeisances to Krishna's dearmost devotee, Srimati Radharani. Offering obeisances to Krishna himself. And please note, offering obeisances to the Ananta Lila, the unlimited pastimes. That Ananta Lila in the last line, Namo Nanta Lilaya Devaya Tubhyam, is hiding the confidential Madhurya Leelas. Because such high caliber devotees who compose such prayers and comment upon them are always conscious about the audience. They don't want that Krishna's most confidential activities are whimsically or casually tossed here and there. So therefore, at the end of Sri Damodarastak, as so many of you know, just a hint is given. But those who are entitled, or those who have proper guidance, know what the hint is referring to. Personalism means that we always take into account the feelings of whom we're discussing, and also the audience to whom we are discussing. Krishna is the Supreme Person, and so naturally his devotees are careful not to throw the most valuable gems amongst persons who have no capacity to understand, or who will even think that these jewel-like pastimes of Madhurya Lila are material. Continuing with this theme of taking into account the audience, let's look at Pritchett Maharaj. As a chief executive, he was expert in understanding the mentalities of who is around him. His very name means that, the Acharyas tell us. Pritchett, one who sees completely, one who detects the motivations, the sentiments of all surrounding him. He showed this at least twice in Srimad Bhagavatam. The first time, you may remember, was when he began his 7-day session on the bank of the river, wanting to know How, in my remaining 7 days, should I best utilize my time? What's the best thing to do? You know, of course, those two classic questions, which are actually one question. What is the duty of someone in all circumstances, and what is the duty of someone about to give up their body to die? And as you've heard so many times, those two questions are actually one. Because in all circumstances, every one of us, at this time or that time, will depart these bodies. Pritchett Maharaj, the Acharyas tell us, actually knew what to do. But he's asking the question mercifully for the benefit of everyone in the audience and everyone who will in the future benefit from his inquiries and Shukadeva Goswami's answer. Of course, at a certain point, Shukadeva Goswami hadn't yet appeared. And what was happening in this assembly, and what an assembly it was, a cosmic assembly, the greatest yogis, sages, mystics, transcendental scholars from all over the universe had gathered. They knew that what Pritchett Maharaj was undergoing would be extraordinary and monumental for the future of the world. They knew that such a mega transcendental event was about to transpire. So Pritchett Maharaj wanted to know, what's the best thing? Apparently there wasn't unanimity. It's not that everyone in such an illustrious audience immediately said, hearing and chanting about Krishna, that's what you should do. No, you had experts in karmic activity. You had experts in mystic yoga. You had experts in Brahman. And you had bhaktas there. So Pritchett Maharaj, being very shrewd, noticed, I want a groundswell of unanimity. That's the way I can benefit everyone in my situation. I want everyone to have no doubts, just as I have no doubts what I should be doing. I should be hearing and chanting the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. At this point, when there was some uncertainty, Shukadeva Goswami arrives. And as the Bhagavatam tells us, all the members of the audience accepted that Shukadeva Goswami is the foremost, and he will resolve any uncertainties we may have. So that's how Srimad Bhagavatam unfolds as Pritchett Maharaj asks Shukadeva Goswami questions. So please remember that there is the audience, and Pritchett Maharaj has taken into account. There's some doubters here. They're very erudite, but they don't understand the Bhakti Siddhanta. I want them to be elevated. Although they are already such extraordinary personalities, they haven't yet fixated upon the ultimate goal of the Vedas, and that's what I want for them. So therefore, I'm questioning Shukadeva Goswami for the benefit of my audience, even though I know what to do. Now, I'm speaking about this because it's Sri Krishna Rasa Yatra. the most confidential and potentially confusing pastime by Krishna. Even more potentially confusing than the Varanahastra Leela, when Krishna confiscated the clothing of the young girls of Vrindavan. Pritchett Maharaj is very sensitive to the audience when Shukadeva Goswami starts presenting Rasa Leela. He notices, Pritchett Maharaj notices, there's some persons in the audience who think this is a bit over the top. This is kind of mundane. Why is the Supreme Absolute Truth acting in this way? So he poses a question on behalf of others. He poses a question to Sri Shukadeva Goswami. Sri Praditchaduvacha Krishnam Vidu Param Kantam Natu Brahmataya Mune Guna Pravaho Paramas Tasam Guna Diyam Katam. O sage, the gopis knew Krishna only as their lover, not as the Supreme Absolute Truth. So how could these girls, their minds caught up in the ways of the modes of nature, free themselves from material attachment? Of course, Pritchett Maharaj knows that the minds of the gopis were not caught up in the ways of Trigunamayi, and there's no question of material attachment. But he's asking the question by taking the premises of someone who has that material vision. Okay, you're seeing in this way. Girls attached to someone, and isn't it that all attachment is material? Obviously, their consciousness is caught up in the modes of material nature. All this attachment, desire, romance. And they didn't know Krishna as the supreme absolute truth. They're just focusing on him as their lover. And obviously, this is material. In other words, again, Pritchett Maharaj is taking the premises of those who lack the necessary transcendental vision. This is Pritchett Maharaj's mercy, and Shukadeva Goswami, of course, will pick up on the cue. He'll take that prompting and apparently chastise Pritchett Maharaj, saying that I already explained this point to you. Didn't we go over this material before? A good teacher will do like that. Didn't we cover this when you asked about Shishupal? Shri Shuka Uvacha Uktam Padastare Tate Chaija Siddhim Yatagataha Prasannapi Rishikesham Kim Utad Dokshaja Priyaha. This point was explained to you previously. Since even Shishupal, who hated Krishna, achieved perfection, then what to speak of the Lord's dear devotees? In other words, somehow or other, fix your mind on Krishna. And even if you have negativity in your fixation upon Krishna, you still benefit. So if that's the case with Shishupal, who hated Krishna in his fixation, what do you think will be the result of Krishna's dearest devotees and their fixation? And Srila Prabhupada always reminds us when speaking about this part of Srimad Bhagavatam that the spiritual master has the right to chastise his disciple. In this case, as we said, Shukadeva Goswami knows that Pritchett Maharaj is asking these doubting questions and utilizing these material premises to expose what others in the audience are assuming or presuming. So now Shukadeva Goswami will enunciate on the Supreme Absolute Truth to clear the air. Avyasya prameyasya nirgunasya gunatmanaha. Let's talk about Krishna. Remember? Let's present his qualifications in case everyone's forgotten. He's avyaya, inexhaustible, aprameya, immeasurable, and there's no question of his being touched by material qualities. He's nirguna. In fact, not only is he nirguna, but he's the controller of the gunas, controller of the modes of material nature. Avyasya prameyasya nirgunasya gunat manaha. In order to properly understand Krishna Lila, we have to know what is Bhagavan. To consider Krishna simply as God, however that word is conceived of and utilized, is very inadequate. God is a very nebulous word, conceived of by those who have a very nebulous, vague understanding. Bhagavatam terminology is Bhagavan, and that does not translate properly into English as just God. This is why Srila Prabhupada uses that terminology, inheriting it from Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, his Guru Maharaj. Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now there you have a comprehensive, power-packed terminology. And the Acharyas, especially Jiva Goswami in his Sandarbhas, which are meant to enhance upon the knowledge of the Bhagavatam. He spends so much time presenting the ins and outs of the terminology, the nomenclature, Bhagavan. Now, yes, we generally know that term as the possessor of all opulence, which of course is completely correct. The possessor of all wealth, strength, fame, renunciation, knowledge, beauty. As part of the magnificent realm of meaning of the term Bhagavan, you can expand upon that meaning that we generally utilize. And that's what Jiva Goswami does. Bhagavan has Shakti. He has potencies. He has capabilities. That means Bhagavan is a person. So Jiva Goswami spends much time developing the understanding that as soon as you admit that Bhagavan has energies, potencies, capabilities, then you're admitting he's a person. And of course, the Mayavadis immediately want to deny that there is an energy and energetic source because they know where that leads. Maybe the average person these days doesn't immediately make the connection. But in India, the Mayavadis are skillful at knowing some parts of Shastra and forgetting other parts. They know as soon as you concede that there is Shakti and Shaktiman, the energy and the possessor of the energy, then you're going to turn into a Vaishnav, right? Watch out. If there's energy and the energetic source, how can there just be complete oneness? There is oneness, the Vaishnavas know, in that all the energies belong to the possessor. In order to understand Rasa Lila, we need to understand Bhagavan. And Shukadeva Goswami presents that to us in the first verse of his beginning to describe Rasa Lila. He deals with Bhagavan. Before turning to that, let's remember something from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Lord Chaitanya is speaking about the science of the Supreme to Sanatan Goswami, Sanatan Siksha, that section of Madhya Lila. And Mahaprabhu expands upon the meaning of Bhagavan that we know and use so frequently, the possessor of the six opulences, Sadaishvarya Purna, the one who is unlimitedly, infinitely deep in these six opulences. So Mahaprabhu explains that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has a unique characteristic known as Swaraja Lakshmi. I love speaking about this one. It clearly shows the difference between ordinary living entities and the Supreme. He explains that Swaraja Lakshmi means he has unlimited desires. Now, I ask often, please consider what is it like to have unlimited desires? I ask the audience, think about your desires quietly. How many can you count? Okay, nice home, nice car or two. Oh, some cars for the children also. Uh, top education, Yale, Harvard, Princeton, CFO, CEO, as a job with ample vacation time, maybe my own private jet, and loving family. The wife dreams of a husband who's understanding, and the husband dreams of a wife who is completely submissive, like a maidservant. Anyway, how many desires can we get to? It's hard really getting past 5, right? And how about 10? When you start getting around desire number 7, desire number 8, you start having to think on a planetary level. Okay, number 9, world peace. It's getting difficult. And to get past 10, not easy. But Krishna has unlimited desires. We can't conceive of what that's like, unlimited desires. This is Bhagavan. Not only does Krishna have unlimited desires, Mahaprabhu explains, but he has the unlimited, infinite ability to fulfill every one of his infinite desires. Now, how can we compete with that? The unlimited ability to fulfill every one of his unlimited desires. This is Bhagavan. So we thank Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami for presenting this information that Mahaprabhu discussed with Sanatana Goswami. So we look at the first verse of the 29th chapter, where the Rasa Leela presentation begins. And the first thing we see and hear from Shukadeva Goswami is Bhagavan. If we can't get past that gate properly, you can just forget about understanding Rasa Leela. So in this way, Shukadeva Goswami has properly performed his role as gatekeeper. He's set up the entry requirements. Sri Badaranya Uvacha Bhagavan Apitaratri Shadadot Pulamallika Viksharantum Manaschakre Yogamayam Upashrita. We could meditate on just the first line forever. Although Sri Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan, still he had a desire for the Rasa Leela. Immediately, you see the need to understand Bhagavan. Although, api, Bhagavan apitaratri, although he's Bhagavan, he still noticed about the night. Remember, at the end of the Varanahastra Leela, Krishna's clothes confiscating pastime, which is bewildering enough for the mundane consciousness to understand. You always have to remind yourself that Krishna is not dealing with material bodies, and everything belongs to him. Everything is his energy. He's just utilizing various circumstances to give pleasure to his devotees who love him purely without a drop of material desire. Our minds are so contaminated by our trying to imitate Krishna in this world, our trying to imitate Krishna's pastimes. I often tell the story of when I was first starting to read about Krishna, Srila Prabhupada's Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead volumes. And I was just beginning. At that time, one of the first pages of volume 1 of the Krishna book, as we commonly refer to it, had a page that just said, Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. So I remember during my New York City days, Manhattan days to be precise, Upper West Side of Manhattan, I showed the book to one of my associates who happened to be visiting. I said, this book is very fascinating. Take a look at it. And the person opened the Krishna book and immediately saw that first page or so and read, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's my job. What is this? How dare there be a supreme enjoyer? I never forgot that. I was shocked. I thought, because I'm so wonderful, my friends are wonderful, of course, and since I'm interested in this book, naturally they'll be interested. So, yes, I was taken aback. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's really hard for me to imitate, but it was just such a sound of contempt and just, how dare someone pretend, someone other than us pretend to be the supreme enjoyer. Even some years ago here in New Zealand, where there's so many tourists from all over the world when there's no COVID, I was talking to one young lady from Japan who was a guest at one of our outreach programs. And she didn't know anything about Krishna, yoga, the Vedas, nothing. Yet she asked me the most baffling question. She came up to me and said, I would just like to know how to get rid of that girl who's with this Krishna. Because I want him. I was just totally shocked. I said, this person knows nothing about Krishna, but she recognizes he's attractive and she wants to get rid of Krishna's companion. Who's that girl? How do I just want to get rid of her. So there was some glimmer of truth in that she recognized, oh, this is the most attractive person, but I want him for myself, and I want it. Let's get rid of that consort who's with it. So these are just a few of the ways that people, conditioned souls, have such misunderstanding of the Supreme Personality Godhead. And in this way, you can easily see why Shukadeva Goswami is so careful. The Bhagavatam is the ripened fruit, but it's carefully passed down. It's not dropped on the ground from the top of the tree. It's carefully handed through parampara so that we can properly receive it. So yes, Bhagavan Apitarachi, although he's Bhagavan, he has desire. And he's looking at the particular night. And it's been 10 months since the Varnahastra Leela. What did he tell the gopis at the conclusion of that Leela as they stood before him, stunned? Because they realized, on the bank of the Yamuna, they realized he's attached to us, just as we're attached to him. If he weren't attached to us, he wouldn't have done this Leela, this Varnahastra Leela, confiscating the clothes. He's attached, and we're attached to him. And they were just staring at Krishna, overwhelmed with this realization that they belong to Krishna. Let's find out a little bit of that discussion, because it really sets the scene for the Rasa Leela. Krishna is going to give them a promise. And Rasa Leela is the fulfillment of that. Krishna tells them, "O saintly girls, I understand that your real motive in this austerity, worshiping Katyayani, a demigoddess, but their motive is 100% pure. As you know, they worship Katyayani in order to achieve Krishna. So he says, I understand your real motive in this austerity has been to worship me. That intent of yours is approved of by me, and indeed it must come to pass. Krishna is telling them, your desire is pure, it must be fulfilled. What is not possible when there is a desire that's only for my pleasure? This is prema, and I am controlled by prema. So there's nothing impossible. And then Krishna speaks something about the science of desire. Namaya Veshita Dhyam Kama Kamai Kolpate Bharjita Kwatita Dana Prayo Bijaya Neshate. The desire of those who fix their minds on me does not lead to material desire for sense gratification. Just as barley corns burned by the sun and then cooked can no longer grow into new sprouts. This is the potency of fixing our desires on Krishna. The more concentrated in purity our desires to please Krishna become, the more our desire capacity becomes completely transformed. The acharyas point out that, for example, in the case of the gopis, during the Rasa Leela, when Krishna's playing his flute and they ran off to meet him, even if you say that maybe some of them originally had material bodies, because of their desire 100% to simply please Krishna, those bodies were transformed. And the details of the Rasa Leela are that some gopis running off to be with Krishna experienced impediments preventing them from leaving the home. Whereas the Nitya Siddha gopis, the eternally perfect gopis, they were gone. Nothing could stop them. But the Sadhana Siddha gopis, who had joined Krishna's Leela, because that is the way perfection manifests. On your way back to Godhead, you first join the Back to Godhead crew in whatever universe Krishna is having his pastimes, and you become trained up. So they were the Sadhana Siddha gopis. And some of them were more advanced than others. So the more advanced Sadhana Siddha gopis, which consist of two categories, the Shrudicharis and the Municharis, those who were the personified Vedas and those who were the sages in the Dandakaranya forest during Ram Leela. So some of them were more advanced in their focus on Krishna than others. So the ones who were less advanced experienced impediments as they tried to leave the house. They even, the acharyas point out, tried to climb out their windows, their top windows, on a ladder and run, and still they were blocked by their fathers, by their husbands, if they were married, by their brothers. But those sadhana siddha gopis who were more advanced, they initially experienced some blockading, but they got free. But eventually, everyone got free because even the ones who were lesser advanced, which although they were trapped in their houses and they couldn't run off, by their meditation on Krishna, their bodies became completely transformed. So if and it and that is spoken, this facet is spoken in that way. If they had material bodies, they were completely transformed by their pure desire. They heard the flute and they wanted to please Krishna. If they had material bodies, that intense hankering to be with Krishna burned up their past traces of karma. So this desire technology, you could call, is very important for us. How to fix our desires upon Krishna. Now you know that in the fifth canto of Bhagavatam, some very important desire information is given. Krishna reveals his strategy, and this is repeated in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. He says, if there's a devotee who is serving me for some material benefit, why should I fulfill that desire in just an ordinary way? Because he or she's my devotee. I will fulfill that material desire, but because he or she is my devotee, I'll fulfill it in a way that they'll never ask for that thing again. Why do I do that? Because just like an expert physician knows how to remove every trace of the disease and doesn't stop the treatment until all aspects of the disease are gone. Similarly, I know what I'm doing with my devotees. Now, in the case of Krishna's most confidential devotees, he's explaining that he's telling them at the conclusion of the Varnahastra Leela that your desires are right on the mark, 100%. And your desires, although the situation that has just happened seems very provocative, still, it's a situation of complete purity in which there's no material desire involved. Therefore, this is just the beginning. You are demonstrating the highest level of spirituality. So I'm asking you, please go home, return to Vraja. Understand that your desire is fulfilled because you're going to enjoy my company in the coming nights. Krishna, of course, is referring to Sri Krishna Rasa Yatra. Now, just to encourage them, the acharyas point out, Krishna implies that this is going to happen very, very soon. And then again, what is time measurement in Krishna Leela? But still, he implied to them by the use of his language that the time is very, very soon coming. I guess this is the beginning of the whole concept in India where someone tells you, just now coming. So Krishna is telling them, Rasa Leela, just now coming. Actually, it was 10 months later. But Krishna knows how to deal with his devotees to increase their anticipation. That's such an important part of love, anticipation. Of course, the technical term in Bhakti Rasa is purvarag, the anticipatory feelings before the lover and beloved meet. So go now, Krishna tells the gopis, return to Braja. Your desire is fulfilled. Your desire is pure. It doesn't lead to any sprouting of material desire. Just like a seed that's left out in the sun and then cooked will never sprout. Similarly, there's no question of anything material sprouting. Although there's been such a provocative situation from the material point of view. So, a good message for us is that if we can appreciate the pure spirituality of the Varnahastra Leela, Krishna's confiscating the garments of the unmarried gopi girls, then we'll not be able to properly relish Rasa Leela. So you might ask, well, why does Srila Prabhupada put such chapters in Krishna book? Maybe you should have skipped them or omitted them because it's there. And millions of Krishna books have been distributed. So what's going on here? But you see, Srila Prabhupada, in relaying such leelas, embeds them in tattva, proper philosophical understanding based on Siddhanta. He makes such a great effort, so mercifully, to do every possible, to enact every possible measure so that no one will mistake what they're reading as mundane if they're actually reading what he has to say. And if they're actually reading how he presents Krishna's pastimes. So, Bhagavan Apitaratri. He's Bhagavan. He's self-sufficient. Aptakama. He fulfills his own desires unlimitedly. Yet, he's enacting this pastime. How does it start? This night of Sri Krishna Rasa Yatra starts after Krishna has dinner, the acharyas describe. He's finished dinner. He goes upstairs to his room. Apparently, he's going to take rest like any other night. But no, his room is on top, and he looks out the rooftop, out of his rooftop view, and sees the night and says, oh, this is the perfect night. Tonight is the night. Now, does Krishna have to make so many endeavors to enact this whole Rasa Leela? You've got to meet up with the girls. There's dancing, all kinds of intricacies involved. The scene, how's the scene set? Decorations, the atmosphere should be perfect. Does Krishna have to worry about all that? No. Yoga Mayam Upasrita. He takes shelter of his energies. Remember, Bhagavan means Shakti and Shaktiman, energy and possessor of the energy. He's a person. He has unlimited potencies. He doesn't have to worry about setting up his own scene for enjoyment. Yogamaya does all that. And what an extraordinarily, inconceivably beautiful arrangement. All the senses are provided with the most exquisitely, unlimitedly wonderful arrangements. You know that there are 5 chapters of Bhagavatam dealing with Rasa Leela. The acharyas explain that just like you have 5 senses, similarly there are these 5 chapters, or 5 life airs. So, what do you see? Krishna sees the moon. The moon is indicating it's time. So Krishna's got the time and he's got the place. He's got the Vrindavan forest, which not only has sights, the moonlight, the rising moon has turned the sky reddish. And then as the moon gets higher and higher in the sky, it starts turning yellow and then whitish. That's just visual. What about the fragrance? Flowers that ordinarily don't bloom in the autumn have mystically appeared. Shadadotpala Malika. Jasmine flowers shouldn't be there. Lotus flowers shouldn't be open at night. And then the fragrance, yes, from these flowers. And the sound of bees and cuckoos. And then touch sensation. The breeze. All this is going on by the arrangement of Yoga Maya to set the scene for Krishna's pleasure. The Vrindavan forest at the time of Rasa Leela combines all the best features of all the seasons. So in this extraordinary setting, Krishna is blowing his flute. Viksharantum manaschakre. He's considered, he's sized up the situation. This is the night. Tonight is the night. I hereby assert, based on my analysis. Remember, he's Bhagavan. That means his desires are unlimited and completely perfect. You can't strip desires from Krishna. He's the perfection of desire. And through his Rasa Leela, he's inviting perfected devotees for the perfection of love. You can't take that away from him. So this is a last point we'll make. That how can you deny supreme loving affairs in the ultimate source? What people in their conditioned life long for, a perfectly absorbing loving affair. They want to deny Krishna of that? If Krishna is actually the cause of all causes, sarva karana karanam, then shouldn't pure and perfect romance be in him? Otherwise, it's not true. Janmadiya Shataha. Vedanta Sutra begins with that. Bhagavatam begins with that. The absolute truth is that from which everything emanates. Everything, guess what? Means everything. We have to accept the full implications of Janmadiya Sata. And that's what Sri Krishna Rasa Yatra is demonstrating to us. Everything indeed, even perfect romance, perfect desire, perfect dancing, all comes from Krishna. In this way, Krishna demonstrates that he is the supreme enjoyer. And he's showing that his supreme enjoyment is always with his dearest devotees. We've come to the end of Kartik, Damodar Leela, where Krishna shows he comes under the control of Mother Yashoda's love. And in Sri Krishna Rasa Yatra, he's showing how he's attracted to the pure love of his dearmost consorts. We'll stop here. I could go on for a few hours, but we'll stop here and ask, are there any questions? I'll take a few questions. Right now is my lunchtime. It's Monday afternoon in New Zealand, so we're in the future. But if you have any questions, I'll happily try to answer a few.
There's a question in the chat box, Maharaj. At what stage is one qualified to understand the Rasa Leela without committing any offenses?
It depends on whom you're hearing from. And as I pointed out, Srila Prabhupada in his presentation in Krishna book has embedded the Leela within Tattva. He's not like a professional Bhagavatam reciter uh, who just talks Leela and people think they understand what they're hearing when actually they're just reacting with their material concepts. Because there's no tattva there, there's no proper scientific understanding that's encasing the Leela. So yes, even now you can read Krishna book. From what even a beginner can read those chapters in Krishna book. At the same time, though, the acharyas point out you shouldn't just focus on those chapters to the exclusion of everything else. You shouldn't do that prematurely. You should develop a full understanding of all Krishna's avatars, all Krishna's pastimes, and not artificially pretend that, oh, just Rasa Leela for me. Wait until one is sufficiently advanced. And we should remember that the cure, Shukadev Goswami says, for material desire is to hear about Krishna's pastimes with the gopis. But one has to be sufficiently strong enough or healthy enough to take that medicine. The example I often give is there's certain kinds of Ayurvedic medicine which you can't take right away. You have to build up your system because the medicine's very strong. And then once you build up your system, when you take the medicine, it knocks out the disease. So we have to be careful to build up our system for focusing on Krishna's confidential pastimes. And we shouldn't artificially jump to that. But nevertheless, we shouldn't deny that that is the tonic, that is the remedy. So we need to become qualified to take that medicine. Therefore, we seek to please the parampara. We seek to carry out Srila Prabhupada's mission and become blessed with the ability to properly focus on Krishna's most confidential pastimes. And the easiest way to do that is through Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Otherwise, Krishna is very difficult to understand. That's why you see so much misunderstanding in India about Krishna, because they're not going through Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And in this age of Kali, it's practically impossible to understand Krishna clearly without the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sri Nityananda Prabhu. You'll know something, but to grasp the whole impact of Krishna Lila requires the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda. So we always try to carry out their order, which is wherever you go, whomever you meet, teach the science of Krishna. And then Krishna becomes pleased, because Krishna is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. All right, I thank you all for your kind attention and association.